So most people know what a French cleat is, and most people know what slatwall is. Both are pretty common hanging systems, but I have small complaints with both systems. So in today's video, I'm going to be merging the two and create what I'm calling the Slot 45 system. I'm personally using it to organize all of my nail guns and accessories. Let's see how it works. I'm actually going to start with a scrap 3/4 inch piece to show you the concept. This is actually a great use of any leftover bits of ply. You could create an entire wall with just leftover scraps a little bit over time. Alright, the first thing to do is cut in a whole bunch of 45-degree slots at the table saw. I positioned my blade at slightly over halfway through my material. Then I'm going for 1 inch spacing increments on mine. Know that this is completely customizable, but 1 inch will give me tons of flexibility on the final product. It will be just a little bit tedious to cut, however, it is easy. I started my fence at the 1 inch mark and then just scooched it over 1 inch after every cut. Total, this little piece took me 3 minutes. So it's not bad. Now let's make a simple holder. My nail guns are the biggest things that I want to store, and since all of them have a hanger, I'm utilizing that for the holder. I start with PVC and simply chop the ends at a slight angle. I'll show you why in a second. While I'm at the miter saw, I also cut a backer for the tool holder. I randomly picked 3 inches wide for this. You'll see that the back of this board has a mating 45-degree slot on the back of it. To join the two, I throw it in my vise and counterbore some holes. This is where the angle is needed. It is just to give me some room to get a bit in here to make holes. It's important to counterbore them so that in the next step, when I by eye center the PVC to the backer, I can attach it with screws, but the heads won't protrude. Again, too easy. Now let's join the two together. My table saw blade's thickness, or kerf, is a little under 1/8 of an inch. So I bought 1/8 inch flat bar and used my cutoff wheel to chop it into bite sizes. It's just something slightly shorter than the overall width of your holder. Now it actually fits pretty snugly on its own, but I went ahead and threw in some CA glue to attach it permanently. So the way that it should work is this holder should now fit into the wall. Spoiler alert, it does. Nice and simple. I can pull it out and adjust it somewhere else easily enough, but when it's in place, it feels really secure. So my biggest complaint with the French cleat system is how easy it is for the cleat to come unseated. Not all the way that it falls off, but enough for it to lean forward. I actually built this system for my power tools back in 2016. I also commonly use French cleat for hanging other things like my knife throwing target, or even cabinets. Hey! So I'm very familiar with it, and it does absolutely work. Then slatwall, I've never personally used because it requires a sort of key slot bit to make the channels. And then there's no good way to make the holder that goes into the channel. You have to buy it. Personally, I like this enough to commit to a bigger sampling. Instead of building something that will attach on top of my wall sheathing, I use 3/4 inch plywood when building my wall. So I just decided to remove an entire panel and make the entire thing into slot 45. Hello, spider. Note that whenever I built this shop back in 2018, I personally chose to use screws, even though it took so much more time to secure all of these panels, just to give myself the option of removing panels in the future. And there's been countless times in which I've utilized it. So if you're building a shop, I highly recommend you doing the same. It's funny because on a small scrap, it's easy to make the call to do 1 inch intervals, but it is a lot different when doing a full sheet. However, I know I'll be more happy with the final product if I have the flexibility that really tight spacing will give me. Know though that you can pick whatever spacing you want. After doing a few on my own, I ended up calling Jacob to help me, and this process goes so much easier with 2 people. If you're curious about the 2x2 attach, you can see when I laid it on the table saw, it had a good bow to it. So I took a scrap and brad nailed it into the plywood on both ends to flatten it out. And this meant I ran my solid bypass mode for the first few cuts. Okay, let's throw it back on the wall. That looks pretty slick. Whew. Man, I think think those lines make it look so sharp. Now I chose this panel specifically because it's close to a workbench and is one of the only lower panels open in my shop. By choosing a lower panel, I'll be able to easily reach every holder on it. Now let's make a variety of holders. Know that this doesn't have to be fancy. Here's a sample of holders I made back in 2016, and they have all held up great. The easiest thing to do is a butt joint with some wood glue to attach the back to the bottom shelf. I used screws because at the time I actually didn't have a nailer. Then I would hold the board up to make a triangle. I love marking in place, and then I would use a whatever saw to cut along the line. Again, using wood glue and screws to attach. Since these holders were for my corded power tools, I threw a hook on the side to give a place to attach the cord. For my new wall, I used my CNC shop to cut out the parts. So they're a little bit upgraded with a dado slot for the back and the bottom. Since I want to store all my nails, most of these are a cubby sort of holder. This will allow me to take my nails out of the package and put them in the cubby. The 15 gauge racks are longer than the framing nails and the brad nails, so I ended up with 3 sizes overall. The battery charger can be hung by 2 screws, so that's simple. Then the batteries themselves just need a platform with a small lip on the front to keep them from falling off. That flat bar holds the holder in really nicely. I find that I have to pull it from one side to another to remove it, almost as if I'm peeling it out rather than pulling it out. Then I can slip it into place, and then I typically have to push on it to seat it 100%. But once it's seated, it feels incredibly snug. Even though that 1-inch increment was boring to cut and it seemed to take forever, I think I'll love having the ability to make minor adjustments in the future, especially as I add more things to it. Let me know what your thoughts are on my new system. And if you're interested in shop organizing projects, I have a huge playlist of over the last 10 years that I've created for you guys. That's it for this one. I'll see you on whatever I'm building next.